Welcome to Canada Files. I'm Valerie Pringle. My guest today is Clara Hughes, who is an Olympian, a humanitarian, and a motivator. She's the only person ever to win multiple medals in both summer and winter games. She won 6 medals in cycling and speed skating. She is also a powerful advocate for mental health and very open about overcoming her difficult childhood and her struggle with depression. Her memoir is called Open Heart and Open Mind, and she has touched and inspired so many hearts and minds. Clara, hello.
Hello.
You have described yourself as a kid as an Olympic delinquent. I mean, really drinking drugs at age 12, passing out, stopping going to school. I mean, it was a scary path you were on. What happened to you?
Well, Valerie, I would call it a path of destruction. And it was, being a young person coming from the family environment that I came from, which was quite dysfunctional, and not knowing how to make sense of that. I'm 50 years old now, so looking back, this is a time when, early childhood trauma, mental health, addiction, all of these things were not a part of the conversation. I don't think we knew how to make sense of that. And so as a young person, making sense of that was finding a place that I fit in, coming from Winnipeg, and my big sister got into all sorts of trouble, and I really followed in her footsteps, and that was where I felt I had a place. I felt like I belonged, and I felt like I had a voice where I didn't feel those things in my family environment. So yes, I was all those things, but it felt quite natural to me in the part of town I grew up in, and it was what all my friends did. And so it was really a natural place to be in that state of delinquency. I was probably, I don't know, if there's like a podium for it, I probably would have had a gold medal around my neck.
But this story kills me. You're on a couch, you're 16 years old, you're probably smoking and drinking at the same time. You're watching a Canadian Olympian at the Calgary Olympics in speed skating.
Yeah.
Gaëtan Boucher.
Defending Olympic champion. When I was in my mom's living room, February 1988, and the Olympics came on, I was basically bored. And speed skating came on the screen, and I just started watching, and I was like, how come I've never seen this before? The beautiful motion of speed skating, these incredibly good-looking men from around the world wearing head-to-toe Lycra, that was nice as well. But it was just Gaëtan. It was really this champion who the commentator said had no chance. He was washed up at 27 years old, injured, sick. And Gaëtan stood on the line, and he had that fire in his eyes, and he tried to win. And for me as a young person, I'd never witnessed someone giving themselves to something positive and legal like that. And it just captivated me. And I would say he planted a seed. His actions planted a seed inside of me that gave me the hope, and I had the audacity to believe that one day I could be that too.
It's so astonishing that that moment changed your life, that you could see all this.
Yeah. But and that's something, Valerie, that I never ever forgot in all of, where my life went, all of the Olympics I competed in, whether I finished in second last place or first place, I always remembered that there could be some kid at home who's so confused and so lost and disillusioned watching what I do. And it's not the result, it's how you do what you do, how you try, the effort you put in. And I never, ever forgot that.
So you said, I want to skate to your mom,
Yeah.
speed skating.
Yeah.
And she went, okay.
Yeah, and my mom, as many moms do, you find the way for your kids. And she called a club, and I had a pair of rental skates, and I was pretty cocky. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go show these speed skaters how to skate. Because I was a good skater in ringette. Everyone always said, oh, you're such a good skater. Too bad you can't handle the ring very well, or the puck in hockey. And I went and I was like, okay, I'll show them. And then I just was surrounded by athletes all of a sudden. Athletes whizzing around the short track, and I was gripping the boards. I was ankle burning because I had these crappy skates. And I was just like, it wasn't this feeling of, oh, what have I done? I don't belong. I was just like, one day I'll be that good. And it transformed me because I was suddenly connected to people eating, sleeping, training, disciplined, focused on their goals. And that had the effect on me that I emulated that instead of emulating the delinquent path that I was on. I wanted to become that. Got me back in school. I quit smoking. I got off drinking and drugs. And it really transformed me into an athlete. And I was really, really good, successful. But the problem is I was still the same person inside.
And we'll get to that. I mean, because you started off skating,
Yeah.
did really well, switched to cycling. Oh my God. You know, got Olympic medals in cycling, the most grueling, almost brutal sport. You think of the hit by car, fell, cracked, cut.
Yeah.
Cycling.
It's a vicious sport, and it's a beautiful sport as well, though. You know, you see the Tour de France, and you see it's just this controlled chaos in the peloton. And I love the tactical side of bike racing. I loved the team element. I was racing professionally on American teams all around the world with the national team, and I really enjoyed the grueling endurance that it took, and the fact that it wasn't just the strongest person that won. You had to be smart, you had to be efficient, you had to be brave.
2 medals you won in cycling to start with at Atlanta, which was, you know, phenomenal. To, you know, early on in your career, you know, what did that achievement feel like?
When I was there, it was brilliant. You know, it was everything that I had worked for, everything I had hoped for. They were 2 bronze medals. They weren't gold medals, but they were as good as gold. For me, in that sport, a Canadian woman had never won an Olympic medal and hasn't since in road cycling, in the road race or the time trial. And so, you know, I felt like in some ways it was blazing a trail and a path for others, but at the same time, it wasn't just wanting to be successful and having worked hard. It was something I desperately needed that wasn't necessarily healthy. I still had so many things I felt were out of control in my life, that going home and spending time with my dad, who, you know, had a lot of issues with addiction, and going home to a very broken family environment that would come together and pretend to not be broken, and not knowing how to make sense of that. And my sister had a lot of struggles, and feeling really responsible for everything, you know, feeling after, I can say this after decades of therapy now and thousands of dollars, that it was, you know, the guilt of the 4-year-old not being able to fix the family. I didn't know what that was, as you know, when I was in my 20s. And so I would go home and just feel like I failed. And those Olympic medals that I had won, I somehow believed that this was going to make everything okay. Like, for some people, it's the, you know, sports car, it's the big house, it's the big paycheck, it's the, I don't know, but it's something tangible, something that is not real, that doesn't have any hope or chance of fixing a whole emotional, spiritual, family, personal environment. And so I kind of believed these were going to fix everything. And when I went home and everything was the same, it definitely sent me spiraling back into addiction and into the first mental health crisis of my lifetime, because it didn't work and I needed it to work, and it was devastating. So literally I went from being on top of the world, feeling like I could do anything, to feeling like I was 6 feet under and couldn't get out of bed, and slept for all day and didn't want to show myself, put on a lot of weight, and felt like I was a failure because I was no longer this fit athlete ready to perform. In fact, I didn't even want to be there anymore. And yeah.
How long did it take you to get a proper diagnosis, to understand?
At that time, you know, this is 1996, 1997. It's like, what was a diagnosis at that time? You know, what was the conversation of mental health, of addiction at that time? It just wasn't happening. And so for me, it was like, you know, getting help from family doctors, from the national team doctors, saying, this is what I see in you. You may not understand it, but this is what it is. And getting a clear definition and basically it being explained to me what a mood disorder is, what addiction is, and that there are many people that struggle with this. And I just thought, I'm eating too much, so that's why I'm not lean, and I need to stop eating. And I had a cycle of disordered eating that went along with all of this, and it was all about controlling everything so I didn't have to feel anything. But the problem was I couldn't not feel, because these emotions overwhelmed me, and I just didn't know what to do with them. Yeah.
Talk to me about pain. I mean, because you talk about your physical pain was a distraction from the emotional pain, which you've referred to. But I mean, it was also a huge advantage you had. I mean, I remember somebody writing to you before one of your most important races saying, you can take the pain and your competitors know that. You seem to have a tolerance for pain and endurance sports that's extraordinary.
I also, yes, I do, Valerie. However, when I look back and I look at young athletes and I hear them spoken about in those terms, I'm like, but why? But why do I take that pain? Why do I talk about that pain? So this is not a compliment. Well, it is, but I don't think it's coming from a healthy place. And that's why there are many athletes who have deep levels of early childhood trauma that's unresolved, that leads them to be these incredibly disciplined people that can take so much pain, and it's a way of coping. And I was that kid who had all of those issues with addiction, who probably would have ended up being in the same mental health condition that I was. But I ended up being an athlete with all of these issues with addiction, but my addiction was just channeled into a place that was accepted by society, and that was trying to win Olympic medals. Overtraining, disordered eating, over-disciplined, all of these things, never being enough, all of these like very negative vortex of voices in my own head that led me to Olympic medals. But is that a good place for a human being?
Well, did anyone try and stop you then? Do you wish other people had stopped you? Coaches are going like,
well,
you go, girl.
Okay, so in my circle, no. However, there was one coach who saw me through this whole period of time, and he ended up being the coach that convinced me to come back to bike racing. And he convinced me that there were many different ways to try to do this same thing of achieving excellence. His name is Eric Van Den Eyne, and he's a hero to me. And he was the right person at the right time, because he encouraged me to take the first steps on the healing path, to be curious about healing. But more importantly, as an athlete, he taught me how to listen to my body. He taught me that a day off is okay, that it's okay to recover and rest. It's okay to not be able to train. And I had never been in an environment before that allowed for that. What I saw was weakness. What he saw as being a responsible athlete and listening to your body and realizing a performance greater than just grinding yourself into the ground and then maybe not even being able to compete.
So you are the only person to have won multiple medals in winter and summer games. I mean, really, that's an astonishing achievement. How do you understand it? You go, oh, I guess I tried really hard. You think of what that means.
Yeah, it's something that I look at, and part of me goes, really? But also the other side of me looks at the privilege of what I've done. I've had the privilege of having all these opportunities to try, even as a female, in Canada, but as, a white heterosexual woman, I fit in, and I fit the mold of what is expected. So I look at it like, how many people did not even have the chance to try to do this because of the structures, the systems in place that prevent everyone from having this opportunity. Doing the work that I did for so many years with Right to Play and traveling the world and seeing the impact of sport and play on children in all kinds of environments, I look at that and I'm just like, wow, like the privilege of what I got to try to do is not lost on me. So yes, I worked my butt off, and I also have a tremendous amount of physical ability and talent that came to me in my DNA. And I got lucky along the way as well. And I'm fortunate to have shared a life for 27 years with a fantastic human being, my husband, Peter Guzman, who has had a massive impact on my life. And without him coming into my life in 1996, I would not have gone on to do what I did. So yeah, I've been lucky.
One of my favorite lines is you turning to Peter at the London Olympics 2012, when you went back to cycling after you'd won all your skating medals and also cycling ones, and you didn't win in London, although you performed brilliantly having come back. And you turned to him and said, "It's really hard to win an Olympic medal." You thought, like, duh.
And I finished 5th in those Olympics, and I'm really proud of that and also grateful for it because of what you just said, because I have earned 6 Olympic medals. I've also finished in second last place in the Olympics in 2000. I've had all of these different results, but I almost thought it's easy to think that you just do everything right. And even with the broken back, I still did everything right. I still was like, I think I can do this. I think I can pull this off. And when I didn't, it made me realize how hard it is. It's almost impossible to get everything right enough to earn that medal. And it gave me the realization, like, I can kind of stomach this because I have 6 of them. And I have all this hardware, all these souvenirs to share. And how lucky am I to have those things and to have everything go right enough to have earned the place on those podiums. So it was a really good reality check.
How hard was it to give up sports? Finally.
Easy. When I crossed the line in Vancouver in my last Olympic race in the 5,000 meters, I remember putting my skate guards on, walking to the infield, and there were still, 10, 12 skaters to go in that race. I was sitting in first place. I didn't know if I'd win a medal or win the Olympics again, but it was the race of my life. It was beautiful. It was the way I dreamed of skating, the perfect race. The motion happened through me. It happened through me. I couldn't go faster. I couldn't go slower. And when I finished, I looked at my time. I'm like, wow, that's fast. That might be the winning time. But I was like, it just doesn't even matter. They're just numbers. This is what I dreamed of, and I did it. And I knew I was done. I came back to cycling one more time for the London Olympics because I wanted to apply everything I'd learned in skating, training with Julie Wong, all of the knowledge, all of the experience. I wanted to apply it to bike racing to see if I could do it even better, to see how good I could be with all of this. And when I finished the London Olympics, after I said to Peter, it's really hard to win an Olympic medal, I also said, I'm done. And he said, I'm so relieved. Because he was with me through every one of those races, with the exception of Atlantics. We hadn't known each other then. And it just felt right and good. And I always say to young athletes when they talk to me about retirement or stopping, and I call it quitting, I just didn't show up anymore, And I just say, you will know. You actually will know. And I had the great privilege of finishing both of my sports on my own terms. Like an injury, an illness, a circumstance didn't stop me from continuing. I chose to stop, and I think that makes it a lot easier too. It just was not me anymore, and I didn't care enough. And you really have to care at the deepest level of your humanity to pursue something that hard.
So one of the greatest things you've done post-Olympics is being the best-known advocate for mental health in Canada. Taking on a huge campaign. You rode across the country, went to 200 communities to raise awareness and say to people, you're not alone. And I mean, you took on a lot of pain and you helped a lot of people. Why did you do that?
I had this, it was kind of an epiphany after the Vancouver Olympics, where I won a bronze medal. It wasn't gold, and people were like, I saw you win the gold medal. And people just connected to that moment of, like, I finished that race and I didn't care if I won or if I was in 13th place. It was this energy of excellence, of just giving yourself, of joy, of sharing this joy. And people connected to that. And then people have always said, I recognize you by your smile. As soon as you smiled, I knew it was you. And I had all of these other things that I had kept so private and so buried, and was really, I'm still making sense.
Of your own illness.
Of myself.
Yeah.
Of my whole self. Of my childhood. Of all my adolescence, my time in sport, all of the experiences, the struggles. It was a lot easier to grasp onto the joys and share the joys. And the human condition is made up of both. It's the whole spectrum. And I just realized I have only shared a part of myself. And why have I never talked about this? That chance came with a sponsor of mine, Bell Canada, who was taking on mental health with the Bell Let's Talk campaign. And I asked to be involved. I asked to be involved not only for myself, but for my sister, for my dad, for my mom, for so many people that I had seen struggle in silence. And it was just an opportunity. And I was just like, can I be a part of this? Because I think I have something to share. And I did not know it was going to be such a big thing. I don't know if I would have done it had I known it was so big. In retrospect, that's a very intimidating thing, but it also felt as natural as it did to try to be an Olympic champion. It was something inside of me that I had to give, and that I felt I had to give.
And your message is
just that you are not alone. And as I have experienced on my healing path from the very beginning to this day and beyond, being seen and being heard and being believed by somebody holding that space for you, it can change your life, it can save a life, it can make the difference in a life. And sharing my story has taught me the importance of that.
What do you see your role as now?
My role right now is just nothing.
What?
Is leading a quiet life, is having the energy to connect with the people I'm with, when I'm with them, in that time and space, and to be present. It's not running around, being all these things.
Being Clara.
Being on this trajectory of, you do this, you do that, and then you do this, and then you have that. It's like, I had a chance in my life in 2017 to put a pause on everything. And it was a very intentional pause of kind of like how I quit sport, both my sports. I quit everything. I resigned from every board I was on. I no longer did public speaking. I stopped doing any media. I just stopped everything because I felt like I was on this trajectory of becoming this person that I no longer knew who I was, and I had to stop it because nobody else was going to. So March 22nd, 2017, I stopped everything. And I started walking, and I walked for about 6 months of each year, hiking, the long, Canada to Mexico, Mexico to Canada, and then other trails like the Arizona Trail, the Grand Enchantment Trail, the Great Divide Trail, the Vancouver Island Trail. And I just, by walking and having that quiet in my life for the first time, it helped me walk into who I am. It was a way of slowing my life down to kind of the pace of a human being, of a very normal person, walking, listening to the sound of my feet, connecting to the land, the desert, the mountains, the rivers, the waters, the sky, the animals, the trees, the environment I was in, and then connecting with myself and to be present with the people I get to meet. And that's really important to me.
What does being Canadian mean to you?
Being Canadian means to me, as an athlete, it was, just respect, self-respect, respect for others, fair play, this idea of traveling the globe with this beautiful maple leaf on my back, of being something bigger than myself, of a responsibility. But being Canadian to me also means the other side of that responsibility, of realizing we have so much work to do to reckoning with this colonial space, reckoning with the history that has yet to be really, really not just taught, but to be accepted. We have a whole history that has impacted in the most violent ways and continues to impact in the most violent ways. So many people, Indigenous people. So being Canadian to me is understanding we have so much work to do, and my work starts with me, and it starts with the people that I encounter, and it starts with standing up for what I hear and what I see in a fair and just way for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Clara.
you, Valerie.
So lovely to see you. Thank you
too.
very much for coming in.
You as well. It's always great to connect with another ginger. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Canada Files.
The preceding program was made possible through the generous support of Michael McCain and family, as well as the following donors: Ted and Alice Kernahan, the Browning Watt Foundation, Mary Davey, David and Cheryl Carr, Jim and Sandra Petbledo, Tony and Sherry Fell, Bryce and Nikki Douglas, Richard Wernham and Julia West, Charles and Marilyn Bailey, Richard Pilasoff, Clench House Foundation, Kathy and George Dombrowski, the 63 Foundation, and by the Central Canadian Public Television Association.